Uh,
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Paradigm Shift Podcast, the only podcast on the internet. Don't look that up. Today, we're going to be discussing various different topics, but the primary one we're going to be starting off with is the question of why podcast? Tell us, Nikki,
well,
because I
there are a
have no
number.
idea. I am not the professional here.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm the guy
There's a
with the
number of
radio voice.
there's a number of benefits. There's actually a
Right.
cognitive bias. I forget its name, but there's a cognitive bias that comes from people trying to justify decisions they've made. So we're already suffering from confirmation bias, which is a good start
Okay,
because
that's
we made the
that's a
decision to podcast. We're
that's a
gonna
great
inevitably
beginning.
be trying to justify that.
That's a great beginning for our unbiased podcast to begin with a bias.
Yep. Okay, but I thought we'd start from the general, Eric.
Right.
And then move from there to more specifically what our podcast is trying to do.
Hello, it is me, General Eric.
Yes. Okay. Do you have any ideas? I've got a list here, but
A list. A list of ideas.
yes, a list of ideas.
Right. Okay, ideas. Good question. So what are the benefits of podcasting? This is
Yeah,
a very
just in
vague
general.
topic we've begun with.
No, it's fine. I'll get us started here. So one point is that you get to share a message and be influential.
Right.
Just look. I mean, I'm sure you can relate with this. Just look at what you talk about to your friends and family in everyday life. You have this desire to share what you're truly passionate about with other people.
Right.
Most people have this desire to share things that they're passionate about. They see something really cool and they want to tell it to their friends, right?
That's fair. That's fair.
And I think that's a major motivation for content creation in general.
Right. So now that we've gotten that across, where do we go from here? How do we shape this podcast exactly? What are the benefits of podcasts like ours?
Uh, of our podcast specifically. Yeah, of course. So, because we're talking about politics and philosophy, we get to contemplate political opinions and refine our arguments. Because even if nobody's listening, and I hope there will be people listening, there's this ability to contemplate political opinions through constructive civil discourse that's extremely beneficial just in becoming a functioning member of society.
Right. So
Now, the scene is a bit full for politics right now with people that already have strongly held beliefs. I'm looking at you, Ben Shapiro. No, wait,
Jordan, who the what?
Jordan, who? Yeah, so we're young and we're malleable.
Yep.
So our aim is to examine things with as little bias as possible and objectively reason our way to our own opinions.
We're intellectuals, TM.
Yes, we are intellectuals. Hey, but that's not everything I had for general benefits.
Right. Okay,
So there's
interesting.
this
Tell me more
influence that
benefits.
you get on people when you share your passions with them. You can change people's minds. Uh, in some small way, you're making an impact. You're not exactly going to change the world, but you can influence other people, and that's a good start. And what this leads to, as you influence people, as you share your passions, as you start building a brand,
Hmm?
you're elevating your status in the world, right?
Right.
So you're as you're growing an audience, you gain credibility as someone with the authority to talk about the topics you talk about. And I saw this one free podcasting course by John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire. He
Hmm.
points out that you gain access to what he calls the rock stars of your field. You can get interviews with famous and influential people, in other words.
Right. I'm sure
And
we'll make it
you
to
know,
that point.
yeah, probably not. Well, maybe we
No,
will.
no, 100% guaranteed. We're gonna be famous. We're gonna be rich and famous, and that's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
the
yeah.
only benefit.
Look, confidence is the key.
Confidence is the key. Just fake it till you make it. You gotta run through. If you're going through hell, keep going.
Where's the line between arrogance and confidence?
Uh, your perspective.
Uh-huh. That was a snappy response and a very interesting one.
That's
I
my
mean, yeah,
specialty.
I guess so. I mean, depends. Yeah. So yeah, as John Lee Dumas points out, this also builds your credibility and authority. If you get interviews with the rock stars,
Right.
then when people watch you talking to them on the same stage with them, then in their mind that elevates your status.
That is fair.
Okay, but
It's a good thing I've got you here to like cite all the sources and like bring up the topics because I could never pull this off on my own.
I mean, yeah, you're welcome, but I couldn't do it without you.
Well,
You're
you definitely could. Moving on.
no, yeah. So those aren't reasons to podcast specifically. Many mediums have the same benefits.
Hmm.
You can build your brand by blogging. You can share your message through YouTube. So why podcast specifically? You got any ideas?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I feel like that's the question we're trying to come to an answer for here because it's one we don't have an answer intrinsically to. Why did we start with podcasting instead of any other medium? And I feel like one of the reasons we could say that podcasting is better for us is simply because we have the dynamic two podcasters would need. I feel like we have obviously you who always comes like super prepared. You have you have all of the info on your fingertips,
Yeah.
and then you need someone who can just sling the words and react and
Yeah,
answer.
I agree. We've had this discussion before. There's this duality between us two and our personalities that is there's a lot of chemistry.
Yeah, exactly. We've discussed this. It's a great setup. We just need to find our direction. Obviously, this is just a pilot episode, and we're gonna be a little bit lost here as we try to, move into things. I feel like we're trying to move a bit quickly, and
Possibly.
I'm really, struggling to find things to say. But I'm sure we'll find more comfort as we move forwards.
Yeah, I agree. That's as we practice, we're obviously going to get much better, as with anything. And learning is one reason I'm here today and trying this podcast out, just on a personal level. So I like trying new things and bettering myself.
And perhaps one day we will actually get guests. Depends. We'll see. If anyone if anyone if we catch anyone's attention, then boom, boom, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Cool. Yep.
Then I
cool.
would feel extremely accomplished.
Oh yeah, that's like that is the big leagues right there. If you can get an interview with anyone, like Tom from across the street.
Yeah.
Like, welcome to the studio, Tom.
I would take it. I would take it.
Welcome to the studio, Tom. What's your opinion on politics?
No, I mean you can sell anything if you try hard enough. Like, Tom, here we are interviewing the average Finn. What are the political opinions of the average Finn from the capital city region? Boom.
Boom.
Everybody cares about what Finns think.
Yeah,
We're a
exactly.
Scandinavian country. Everybody's like, hey, the Nordic model is amazing. Okay, not everybody. A lot of people. Let's not go there just yet.
Yeah, well, I guess a lot of I mean, like when you look at any top 10 site on like the best countries to live in, you've always got like 3-4 Nordic countries.
We tend to score well on the HDI. Weren't we the happiest country supposedly this year?
I don't know about
Number one in
that.
happiness.
I did
Okay,
read. I
I'm not
did. I
certain.
did read about Finland's crazy suicide rates finally dropping.
Well, That's a benefit. Yeah, we tend to commit suicide at a sort of a ridiculous rate, don't
But
we?
you know,
I
I'm
mean,
just saying that's a good correlation that you know it probably likely
it
that
probably means we're getting
yeah, it
happier.
probably means we're getting happier if less people are killing themselves in our country.
Yeah,
I
it's
f-
understandable. Just look outside. Oh, there is actually light outside at the moment, but that's because it's midday.
yeah,
We'll be losing that in 2 hours or so.
and here it's because both the skies, the buildings, and the ground are all light gray.
Is there snow outside at the moment?
Oh yeah, plenty of snow.
Yeah, there was lots of snow yesterday, but not the day before, I think. So, y- we've we talked about reasons to sort of become influential and build a brand. But I
Right.
did want to touch upon, start justifying myself here with my cognitive bias. What makes podcasting superior to YouTubing or blogging?
Yeah.
Well, in one sense, I think it's quite a bit easier when you don't have to deal with video quality or being visually pleasing, because all the appeal is in your talking. In our case, dialogue.
Right. Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up is, the fact that we can do it live, which is an extra benefit because we can do it live and then we can also have the VODs later.
Yeah,
And
it makes it probably quite a bit less time consuming.
yeah, exactly, with, the added downside of being a lot more improvisational.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a significantly less amount of planning that goes into it, so you save time on that, but also you have to improvise a lot in the moments.
Exactly, I feel like we're both slightly struggling for things to say. Maybe you not as much as me.
Well, I have fallbacks. You don't at the moment. So,
That's fair, that's fair. You're the fallback guy.
yeah, whenever the conversation is starting to dry up, I'm gonna move on to the next topic. 'Cause that's just how it works.
Yep, that's how podcasts work. Incredible. We've
Yeah,
done it. We've invented the podcast.
yeah, I don't know. That might also make it less expensive to produce a podcast because you don't need fancy cameras or lighting.
Yeah, all you need
But
is a
that's
decent
only
microphone.
yeah, thing is, I guess that's only at the sort of uh entrance to intermediate level. If you look at the really advanced guys, they've got some crazy sound engineering going on, and you've got your sound proofing and padding with your foam, and
Oh yeah, of course.
it
But
gets pretty crazy.
they have like entire studios, obviously.
To be fair, YouTubers do that too. So
Yeah, I mean,
at the top level.
have you seen like even podcasts with like not so good hosts? I mean, have you seen like the H3H3 podcast? That guy not very good at podcasting, but look at his studio. He has like an entire full studio with like the people at the back with the like glass and like
I
soundproofing
Yeah, I don't know.
everywhere, couches for like guests.
I don't watch podcasts very often when it includes watching.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It doesn't necessarily include watching, but I'm just saying their studio is pretty insane. And like when you look at
Yeah,
different radio
maybe I've seen
shows,
like one episode at some point.
there's a bunch of radio shows that are on YouTube. I remember the one. What was the name? Something Jungle Radio. Hold on. Uh, okay, Jungle Beats. I think
Jungle Beats. Okay, yeah, I
could
haven't heard
be,
of it.
could be. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's Jungle Beats. They have a pretty crazy studio, and they're
Yeah, at
like
that
a
point.
YouTube radio show. They are actually a radio show. They have like an
Okay.
actual radio channel, but they also have a YouTube channel.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
at that point you're
yeah,
at that point you're quite a bit closer to YouTubing, making videos than you are to just podcasting, which is the purely auditory aspect.
right, understandable.
But I mean, I'm sure it has its own selling points as well.
Exactly.
Okay, this could I was thinking that
Yes.
just now about the how it could be less time consuming because you escape a lot of work that goes into planning and doing video editing and that stuff. Could also
Right.
make it a lot easier to stay on schedule and consistently upload content.
That's a fair point. But
And
yeah,
mhm,
no,
yeah,
you go ahead.
yeah. So this there's also this listener commitment with podcasts, and this is probably the number one point. So I can go into it here.
Sure, go for it.
Yep. So podcasts can last anywhere from 15 minutes to probably an hour, maybe more, but usually an hour is around the maximum. It depends on how often you're uploading, right? So if
Well,
you're uploading like
there's plenty of
every two
like
days,
there's plenty of like
mhm,
3-hour podcasts.
okay. Well, they're probably not uploading very often, or maybe that's more of a Twitch thing
like
to talk
weekly.
for very long periods of time.
Well, they have a lot of content set up. They're not exactly topic podcasts. They're more like let's look at like this week's news and content and react type podcasts.
Yeah, where are you? What? Oh, like where do you see these? Twitch, YouTube?
Uh, like I mentioned earlier, the HGHG podcast. Those are usually
Yeah, because these aren't exactly the most common places for that people go to for their podcasting. There are other hosting services, places that get like you SoundCloud and Spotify has podcasts now, I think.
right,
But
of
there are
course.
there are tons of Apple has its own podcasting platform. Well, a lot of places that people go to for podcast specifically, and there it's quite a bit different than if you're doing these live streaming situations where it really can drag on for long periods of time.
Right, of course. I
But
remember. But like the H3 podcast that I mentioned is about 1 to 3 hours long. I remember there was a podcast I watched back in the day called the Drunken Pheasants podcast. I think that's still ongoing. Probably has like 500 episodes by now, but that went on for like 2 to 3 hours.
yeah, that's a long period of time. But now that you mention it, I think I have seen on Twitch similar podcasts with to the formatting of ours go on for many hours. I don't think that's uh, maybe it's okay for streaming, right? Because people go in the middle of your episode and then they keep watching.
Right.
But in general, for podcasts, I don't think that's actually a particularly good strategy because even though podcasts get longer viewer retention than YouTube, for example, and I do have stats on this, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
If it's many hours long, nobody's going to watch the whole thing from start to finish. They
But
might even just get overwhelmed by the length of time and pick a different one instead because they want to hear it all the way through.
that's fair. That's fair. That's a fair assessment. I do see where you're coming from, and I'm inclined to agree. I think you're right with the idea that 1 hour ish is like a good time frame. I'd say like an hour and a half, something like that. Is something where
Mm.
I'd be like, okay, this will require a bit of a time investment, but it's not that bad. It's manageable. I can watch that. It'll be Gucci.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually heard okay, so this isn't exactly a statistic because it's sort of a second-hand source, but I heard one podcaster. What was his name? I don't remember his name. Sorry, whoever you are, I'm stealing your content here. He said that he said that most podcast listeners, or the average podcast listener, I should say, consumes over an hour of content daily.
Right.
I don't think the average person who consumes YouTube watches over an hour daily, but we do obviously, there are a lot of people who watch many, many hours. But,
Yeah.
yeah,
When
I
I
don't know
got
if it's
the
the average, but
when I got this sort of like email for my YouTube stats, like in 2018, it's or something like that. I saw a stats board for my channel. I had like 3 hours daily.
that's a long time. I can see myself somewhere at least in the 2-hour ballpark.
Yeah, because that's mostly because I have videos on in the background, not just like podcasts, but all
Uh,
sorts of different things.
yeah, that makes sense. But
ASMR or like just, let's play videos with like people with good voices.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that's the appeal of the intrinsic appeal of podcasts, is that you can just leave it on in the background and listen to the speaking, and you don't miss out on anything. Because in videos, a lot of the time, even though you can just put it in the background and listen to the voice, they refer to things that you should be seeing in the video that you're not actually seeing because you're not watching it. So
Right.
it actually hurts sometimes.
Yeah, that
Some people,
is.
they're just listening, and then they reference something on screen, and you immediately feel a bit left out.
Oh no, I have to alt tab now.
Yeah, and that's also means that also ties into the viewer retention because of the nature of situations where people are listening. Like when you're in transit, when you're at the gym, when you're
Hmm.
doing something else and just passively listening with it in the background, you tend to listen for much longer periods of time.
Right.
Videos and text-based mediums, so that includes blogging and such, require this active visual attention where you're constantly reading or watching the video and getting this visual stimulus instead of doing something else that's sort of the main task, and then just having it on passively in the background.
Yeah. Okay. Like a bit of an anecdotal story. I've actually noticed that with like ASMR. It's like if I'm trying to, really get to sleep, I can watch ASMR for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, oh my god, this has gone on forever. I'm just gonna go. And but if I
Yeah.
put like ASMR on in the background to calm myself, to like, relax my nerves when I'm playing an intense game or whatever, because that helps me, keep control of my
Mhm.
actions. I just put on like an hour long ASMR video, and I'm like, pass it over already.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that completely. Sort of the same deal with listening to music, is when you're doing it in the background, you find yourself going through playlists that are hours long in no time at all.
Yeah, that's exactly a good. It's interesting how much attention really warps the perception of time.
Mhm. Of course, well, I guess there is a bit of a downside there as well, is when you're passively listening, you're maybe not paying quite as much attention.
True, true.
Like, when you're listening to your ASMR or your music, I don't think you're actively well, okay, a lot of the time you are, but also a lot of the time you're not actively paying attention to what's happening when you're listening. If you're doing something else at the same time, if you're gaming and you have music on in the background, yeah, of course, sometimes, a lot of the time, you're going to hear a really good song and you're going to bob along to it and you're going to mouth along to it. But also, a lot of the time, you're going to be focused on something else and you're going to miss stuff.
Yeah,
You're going to miss
absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand. I totally agree with what you mean there. I feel like that's obviously one of the benefits of a visual medium. Then, if you want to
Yeah.
get like a proper message across.
Yeah, so of course there are downsides to everything, and I'm not going to completely uh, exaggerate the benefits of podcasting, and I'm also not going to completely paint it black. But even though I'm obviously being a bit biased here, I want to pay attention to the parts of it that aren't that great.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we just want to need to come to the conclusion of the like why podcast question. We don't really need to, declare podcasting as the number one best medium.
Yeah, of course. It's just, here are some reasons why you could podcast.
Yeah, here are some reasons why this could work for you. TM.
Exactly. And some reasons why maybe if you're worried about these particular top or like these particular points, then maybe podcasting wouldn't be for you.
Yeah, exactly. If you can't handle, for example, improvisation, if you can't come up with things to say in a conversation rapidly, like back and forth like this.
Yeah. Then you're in a problematic situation if you can't handle dialogue, especially under the stress of a viewing audience.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I've honestly come here underprepared a little. I feel like next time I should probably do some research as well. Just a
Hmm.
tiny bit, not as much as you, of course.
Yeah, it's
Because
always good when you can, when both people can just bring up something and say, "Hey, by the way, did you know about this fun statistic?"
incredible. Tell me more about this fun statistic.
Well, a 2018 study by Edison Research showed that 80% of podcast viewers listen to most or all of their episodes. When they listen to an episode, they listen to most or all of it,
That is fascinating. So
and
that's a message to all our viewers. Keep up. Keep
yeah,
keep keep
yeah. You
up.
want to be part of
Don't
that
fall behind. You
80%?
want to be part of the 80%?
You want to be left out? You want to be
You want to be,
lonely?
yeah, you want to be the 20%, the lonely, the poor 20% who don't even listen to a full podcast.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I read a study like this somewhere as well, or maybe I didn't read the study itself, but I saw like a YouTube video that mentioned it, where in hotels, if you have, if they put up signs that are something like 80% of people who use this room recycle their towels or something weird like that, uh, then people are more likely to do it than if you just appeal to emotion, like save the environment or something. People like to be part of.
Yeah, exactly. Appeal to popularity.
Yeah, oh, exactly, actually. Argumentum ad populum or something.
Yep, exactly.
Aha.
If you don't want to be one of the outcast losers, you better listen to our podcast. That's
The
right.
entirety of it.
The whole thing. All of
Okay.
you viewbots right now.
All of you view. We need all the view bots. No,
All of these viewbots
we're gonna.
that appear
Are
in
we gonna get
every.
banned if we keep talking about view bots?
I don't probably not, but these guys appear on any channel I've ever made. I think. I
Okay.
think they just like go around and auto follow channels.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
That's weird. Weird and
Yep. And
unnecessary.
oh, I remember the name of the podcast I was talking about earlier.
Huh?
I think this is the guy, Pat Flynn.
Ooh, that's a name. That's a stylish name.
Yeah, it is actually a very fancy name. But there's one more point, the very important one that, in addition to listener commitments, which I think is probably maybe the most important, there's also another very important point, which is the competition. So, do you have any idea how many active uploaders there are to YouTube? Just give me a ballpark guess.
Too many. I mean, have you seen YouTube? The content creation in YouTube is completely oversaturated. No matter what you want to do, there's probably
Hmm.
like 10,000 people already doing it. I mean, just try and start a Let's Play channel in like 2018.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if
All
there's like actually 100,000 of those.
might might be more. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, I think it might be even plausible that there's more than that. Okay, I don't know. I'm guessing, but it sounds like it's when you look at the number of active uploaders to YouTube. Do you have a guess, or am I just going to tell you?
Uh, the number of active uploaders to YouTube, but just
Yep.
overall, like videos,
No, just content creators. So
content
YouTube
creators.
channels that actively upload.
I'm going to say somewhere in the ballpark of 1 to 2 million.
Yep. Content creator Roberto Blake, I saw this in one of his videos, quoted the data scientist Matt Geelan as putting the number at 50 million.
That's a
That's a
bit more.
second.
Good
That's a
lord.
second-hand source, so I'm a bit skeptical. But if you go to Social Blade, they also give at least 24 million.
Oh boy, that is that's 10 times as much as my guess, and a bit
Yeah,
more on
that is.
top. Jesus.
See, exactly. And we're talking active uploaders. We're not talking channels. We're not talking users in general.
Right. That is.
Uh, Now, do you know how many active podcasts there are?
Now I'm gonna go with my ballpark of Actually, I'm gonna go with a ballpark of about 200 to 500,000.
Much better. Currently, there's about over 550,000 active podcasts, which is a number that was verified by Apple at the WWDC this year, so Worldwide Developers Conference.
Right, I see.
I don't know if that's just Apple Podcast or not, but I heard another podcaster, that Pat Flynn lad, say the number is approaching 1 million. So it's definitely around that ballpark, 550,000 to 1 million.
That is quite a large amount of competition. Think we can beat them?
I think we're going to beat them easy peasy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the production value.
I'm pretty sure our appeal is already beating 90% of the
Through the
competition.
roof. Through the roof.
Yeah. So just compare the amount of competition there is on YouTube and with podcasting. It's ridiculous. Now, of course, demand is going to have an impact on that. A lot more people are probably using YouTube than are listening to podcasts, right?
Right.
So, in that sense, it's maybe not the most useful statistic that we know that, okay, there's less content creators for podcasting. But if there's less people listening, then they're also going to get distributed in the same way that they would on YouTube, where they go to you're not going to get many viewers, right?
Of course.
Because your percentage of that small amount might be larger, but it's going to get more or less balanced out by you being a very small percentage of a much larger amount of users.
Right, yeah, the percentage values stay the same.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the exact percentages are.
Yeah,
But
that's assuming the crowd is the same in scale.
yeah, the crowd would have to scale with the size. So that would be about, well, a lot.
That's a good
Uh,
assessment.
Yeah. Mm,
By,
like
by my
about 100
calculations,
times complete.
by my
Hello, Spike
calculation.
Zen. He completely forgot we existed.
Greetings, Spikes, and welcome to our intellectual podcast.
We're being very intellectual at the moment, discussing the competition on YouTube and the competition in the podcasting scene. And yeah, you need to take demand into consideration. Now, I was thinking that it could be possible that on YouTube, even though you have a much larger amount of people, those tend to get funneled towards the largest channels anyway.
Right.
But it's the same situation in podcasting, I'd imagine. Or maybe not. Maybe you just don't have a single podcast or many podcasts that individually have a large market share. Or hold on, if I can use that analogy.
Right. I feel like another difference with like YouTubers and YouTube content is the fact that, I feel like a lot of YouTube's audience nowadays is younger people who flock through towards like people who cater for younger
Mm.
audiences. I mean,
Mm.
more and more kids nowadays are getting their hands on like devices that can access them to YouTube. There's been a lot of stories about. I'm sure you've heard about like Elsa Gate and all those weird children's videos that are like auto-generated.
Yeah, I wish. I haven't heard of that.
That's a
I'm
bummer.
horribly uncultured,
We
sorry.
should talk about that at some point.
Yeah, we can talk about that, but not right now. And since you mentioned the audience, I actually remember another statistic. This one I didn't write down, but I saw it during my research. So apparently, podcasts, they get a affluent audience. So there's like a much larger percentage chance of a podcast of the listener to a podcast having a college degree than the average population of the
Right.
than the average person,
Right,
right?
exactly.
But
That's exactly what I was trying to like segue into. Like YouTube has a more, I don't want to say dumbed down audience because it's just a younger audience
I
compared
actually
to like podcast viewers.
right. I mean, you'd get that idea, but it's a good point that we don't actually know the exact age statistics on YouTube. This is just a sort of impression you're getting.
Right.
But I do know that the majority, or well, the center of the bell curve for podcasts on the age is between 24 to 35 years old, somewhere in that ballpark. So that's like the top of the bell curve. The largest age group is in that area. So
Yeah.
young-ish, but still older, right? It's sort of a really nice
Yeah.
zone with the people who, the upcoming Uh, yeah, I'd say the functioning members of society who are already in the working life and being adults, and also the people who are going to be migrating uh, into more senior positions as they grow older. Like the the most influential generation at the moment is in that ballpark,
Right.
24 to 35 years old. I mean, at least in my opinion, that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, exactly. Young
If you get younger
millennials.
than that, yeah, if you're younger than that, then you're not yet an adult. You're not yet having an impact. And if you're older than that, then you don't have much time left, so to speak.
Yeah,
These
younger than that
people,
is like you're a young adult. You're still like obviously trying to get yourself into life. If you're like
yeah,
someone who's going for a high education, then you're still just like
yeah,
in
you're
the
still at
winds of
school.
getting your degree, which is obviously a big experience.
Yeah, you're working minimum wage, desperately trying to pay for your college tuition.
Yeah, exactly. And
And you've got many years to go.
if you're past the millennials, you've sort of like gone past your era of like influence, unless you want to go for like a political position or something.
Yeah, exactly. And Spike Designer, by the way, yeah, you can definitely, if you have some questions to ask, then you can definitely do that.
Yeah, I was gonna mention
We'd
that.
be happy to receive them. Yeah, I didn't respond because we were busy talking about
Yeah,
this.
same here.
Okay. Uh, so what were we just talking about?
We were talking about the audience of podcast viewers being older than
Yeah,
YouTube
the
content.
audience. Exactly. And here's one point. So even though the audience or like the current viewer base of podcasts would obviously be significantly smaller than the viewer base of YouTube, for example. We keep using YouTube, but I mean, I think that's a fair comparison to make because YouTube is the main platform for content creation at the moment, and it also has audio aspects which text-based mediums don't have. So
Hmm.
it's really just a question of picture or no picture. I think that's the main question.
Yeah,
And so I think it's a fair comparison to make to be primarily focusing this on YouTube. So even though podcasts have a significantly
I mean,
smaller.
yeah, we're even like
Hmm?
streaming to YouTube right now, so you can just tell the influence of like YouTube's existence. Even though Twitch is like the main streaming site, it's still pretty smart
Yeah,
to stream to YouTube.
exactly.
You didn't see it, but I did the like tapping on my forehead, on my temple.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, why do we choose to stream to YouTube at the same time? Obviously, because it's the number one platform for content creation.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where if we wanna link this podcast to someone after the fact, we send them to YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. YouTube
Obviously,
is best for saving bots and everything.
yeah. So as I was saying, even though there's a smaller target audience, or even though there's a smaller uh, amount of consumers for podcasts, podcasting is growing. And eventually, we can imagine that it might get to the sort of YouTube level of what YouTube is right now. I mean, at least the population of the Earth is going to go up, so the population of podcasters and people watching podcasts is going to go up. And if we compare the two, YouTube, as you said, is saturated, whilst podcasting is in more of an early stage. So if you get into it now, you actually have a much higher chance of being up there later when the viewership does go up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like any YouTuber right now will tell you that you have a zero chance of getting into the position where they are with the current conditions because most YouTubers started like 5 to 10 years ago. Most of the big famous YouTubers, unless they're like exploiting like a child audience, then they're
Yeah.
generally someone who's been at it for a very long time. I mean, look at Jack's
Hmm.
films. He's been here for 11 years. He's got like 4.4 million subs.
Yeah. There are uh, there's sort of a oligopoly going on in YouTube right now. But that isn't to say people can't get really big really fast if you find that niche. But the point is that the market is really saturated in podcasting. You have a lot less competition with sort of, and it's a lot easier to get a niche. In my
Yeah.
opinion, Spike Zen says, in my opinion, podcasts are going up since people still need something to listen to while doing mundane, everyday things. Same with music. And that's true. As the population of Earth goes up, and it will continue to go up, as I'm sure there are going to be other platforms, there are going to be other things than podcasting, but podcasting was here first.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
podcasting is. Mhm.
People want things that like aren't necessarily dumbed down, but just require less attention,
Yeah,
so that they
it's
can so they
it,
have something in the background. Like,
it's what we talked about earlier.
yeah,
You always want something to listen to while doing something else entirely.
yeah. And referring to that YouTube thing back then, we were talking about a few moments ago. It's yeah, exactly. If you find a niche, you'll never find something no one's ever done before. But if you find something that few people have ever done before and you do it well, then you have that chance of becoming the front runner of said thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the nature of something being at an early stage is you get in there, and chances are that you have a much better success rate than somebody who goes when it's already really filled up.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't think we'll get any disagreements with that. And because everybody loves statistics. I have more from Edison Research, their 2018 study that I quoted earlier with their 80% number. Spiked Zen, by the way, you should know this, 80% of podcast listeners uh, finish or listen to most of the episodes they listen to. So if you want to be part of that 80%, you need to keep listening. And you should definitely listen all the way to the end. You want to be
Yep.
part of that group,
If
right?
you want to be part of the 80%, you don't want to be left out. You don't want to be a loser.
Mm-hmm.
You want to
I'm
be a
sure
winner. We have to be big winners.
I'm sure there's nothing logically fallacious about this argument whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with this argument at all.
Yep, so I've got more numbers. 64% of the US population is familiar with the term podcasting, and that's up 4% from 2017 when it was just 6%.
Is it
So that's up.
hold on? Is it really shameless advertisement if we're advertising ourselves on our own podcast?
Yeah, is it? I mean, it's definitely very shameless.
It's very
I mean,
shameless, but it's really
and then the question is whether it counts as advertisements or not. It's our own podcast. Can we tell you to listen to it in the podcast itself? I think so.
perhaps. Yes, you're going the statistics.
Of course. Yep. So 64% of the US population is familiar with the term podcasting, which is up from 60% in 2017. This might reflect the fact that older generations are, dying off, and we're getting more and more the users on using technology in general.
Yeah, true.
But the point is that it's not just it's podcasting isn't just going to grow linearly with as the population of the planet grows. It's growing anyway as a percentage of the population. 44% of the US population has listened to a podcast, which is up from 40% in 2017. 26% listen to podcasts at least every month, up from 24% in 2017. And 17% listen to podcasts weekly, which is up from 15% in 2017. So there is the growth in percentage of the population is there as well.
Right. Yeah. As people become more aware of the existence of podcasts first off, more people find interest because they didn't know podcasting was really a popular thing, like
Yeah.
an actual medium. And of course, there's people who just find podcasts that are comfortable for them.
Yeah.
There's always going to be the types of people who look at a thing, don't try it, and go, ugh, that's awful.
Yeah. I heard a reference to the podcasting wave.
Hmm?
Have you heard of this?
I have not.
Okay. I don't know any specific, but I've heard it talked about in multiple places. I wonder how Spike Zen says, I wonder how trends will fluctuate when human population reaches the predicted 10 billion and then gradual decline. That's an interesting topic.
That is curious.
We should talk about that at some point, not in this episode, but
Yeah.
we can talk about
Put that-
overpopulation.
Put that in the notes,
And-
boys.
Yeah, overpopulation, climate change stuff. Sure, I'll literally take notes of it right now.
Yep, just write it in your notes. When do we Thanos snap?
Thanos snap. Okay, I wrote that down. High quality.
Perfect. Boom, we can
Okay.
discuss the ethics of the Thanos snap.
Okay, let's quickly recap the sort of general points we've made. So, podcasts allow you to be influential and share a message. It builds your brand, your credibility, and your authority.
Of course.
And there are technical aspects that make it, in some ways, superior to other mediums like YouTube and blogging, or I guess if you're like a journalist or something, newspapers, articles, and stuff like that. There are aspects that technical aspects like listener commitment that make it in some ways superior, and there are other ways that make it a little bit worse. The competition and the competition is much smaller than it is for YouTube.
Mhm.
and podcasting is growing. So you want to get in early.
Right. That is
Oh,
that is an entire summary of the things we just talked about. Incredible.
yeah. So next, I know, because I didn't want to make it too confusing before we move on to our podcast specifically. So I said at the very beginning, I wanted to move from the general to the specific. And I
Right.
want to talk about what we are doing specifically. Do
We're
you have?
talking
Mhm.
at each other at a very high pace.
Yes, exactly. We're talking at each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I don't know if I agree with that. Well, at some points, sometimes I'm talking at you a little bit, but most of the time, I'd hope we're talking with each other.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Do you have any personal motivations that led you to this? 'Cause
Uh,
I've got some stuff, but
Big fame, big fortune, big women. Get paid, get laid, Gatorade. No. It's something to do with a friend, and it's a great way to spend the time. It's kind of like a hobby, you know. It's something. I mean, why do people do hobbies anyway? If it feels like I have some sort of like purpose, I'm getting some sort of message out there.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. It's also, unlike some other hobbies, it's really permanent
yeah,
because you're actually creating something and it stays.
yeah,
It remains, and you can look back on it, and other people can see it.
yeah,
It's not like
we're creating
going
content.
out and yeah,
Yeah,
what you were saying?
we're creating content and we're putting it out there, and it stays there. I mean, if I learn to like play an instrument, then like sure I can play the instrument, but that's just like there's
Mm-hmm.
no physical trace of said instrument,
Yeah.
like learning skills.
Yeah, unless you're composing and then publishing that information,
Yeah,
it's
but for
really
that
sort
you're
of
still gonna need like a ton of experience playing.
yeah, exactly. It is a little bit fleeting. You just play the instrument, and I guess you got better. That's what you accomplished. But here we're actually creating something.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's a yeah, I think that's a fabulous point. We can even go one step further and say compare it to going out and playing football with friends. Okay, you had fun. That's always a good thing.
Right.
But it's something more that you can get than having fun. And
Yeah.
if you play an instrument, you have fun. You learn. You probably in that playing football with your friends, you probably also practiced your social skills. You probably also learned about the sport itself.
Yeah.
There's more that you can do than just learn. Spike says, "Hang on, I just realized how is Niki's mic quality so good?"
You got a new one.
I got a new one.
I did as well, actually.
Yeah, that's true. So as I was saying, there's more you can do than just learn and have fun. Because you can use those, and together with them, you can make a product. You can make a product that you can look back on later and go, "Wow!" And you can make a product that other people can look at and be influenced by.
Yeah.
And that's one personal motivation I had, like I said at the beginning, is learning, trying new things, and improving myself. Right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
podcasting, it's an easy and effective way to get better at skills like politics, argumentation, discourse. I mentioned this, right?
Yeah,
The
exactly.
ability
That's
to
what I
contemplate. Mhm.
that's what I wanted to get into as well. I feel like it's a great way to improve your public speaking, for example. Because this
Yeah,
is
and
essentially public speaking, and it's going down in record as well.
yeah, exactly. And I'll get back to that a little bit later, how it's being recorded and the permanence of it, because it is a positive, but it's also a downside. So that's but yeah, it is practicing public speaking in essence, and I've done that before. Went to that debating competition. I
Hmm.
like trying to practice my influence skills. You hear about a lot of famous historical people. Julius Caesar comes to mind. Hitler comes to
Yeah,
mind.
that's the first thing that came to my mind.
People who were really good speakers, and you can't say Hitler failed. Like in the end, he failed, but
Yeah, of
he
course.
got into power. He managed to whip up the people,
Yeah,
and get them
exactly.
onto his side. And that's a very good thing for you personally on a subjective level, is if
Yeah.
you have the power of the people.
If you have the power to get the people to kill 6 million people, I feel like you're a good you're to kill 6 million Jews. I feel like you're a good public talker. Just a little bit, tiny bit, just tiny bit of a good public talker. If you can, you know, you know,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I think so.
convince your
That's
country
a
to
yeah, that's a good test. You
commit
know you're good at
genocide
public speaking when you
when you
can
can
convince
convince.
people to commit genocide.
Exactly,
Oh
exactly.
God.
It's it's the test. It's the benchmark.
Yeah,
It's the
and
public
obviously.
speaking benchmark. If you can commit genocide, boom, you're a good public speaker.
Whenever you think you're good enough, check. Can you commit genocide?
Do you have the power to commit genocide right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as and so debating is one way. And as we talked about earlier, there are other ways like blogging, uh, that you can and journalism,
Hmm.
YouTube, that you can practice skills like politics and argumentation. So it's not just podcasting, but the point is that it's also podcasting.
Right.
I have practiced debate, but I can also podcast. A quick shameless self plug here in our school news school magazine, which is the IB section's magazine 45/7, which is coming out
Hmm.
this Christmas episode or edition, I should
Yep.
say.
Buy it now.
I have Yeah, I wrote a column for that, which is actually specifically about how debating changed my mindset.
Right. That's a fair point.
Yeah, because you want to keep trying new things and improving yourself. And a lot of the time, as I talked about in the column, people tend to get into this zone where they've learned some things, they've gotten good at some things, and then they only improve themselves at those things. Because once you're really good at something, it's a lot easier to get motivation to do that and get better at it than it is to pick up something completely new and be completely rubbish at it.
Right. Yeah. That's why in a lot of things people sometimes really suck at the fundamentals, even though they're like on the surface level good.
Yeah, and that's exactly what almost happened to me when I was invited to that debating tournament. Is I thought, oh well, I've never done debating before. That's really scary. I'm completely rubbish at it. But that's not the point. Go do it and get better at it.
Right.
Keep improving yourself. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now here's the thing with our podcast specifically is that even though we aim to have as little bias as possible and objectively reason our way to things, which includes pointing out each other's logical fallacies. I
Hmm.
look forward to that. Yeah,
You're gonna
the
tear me a new.
the thing is, your objective reason is not very simple. What a surprise! There is because what your beliefs or your opinions, your reasoning is going to be based on. There's going to be this dependency on your values.
Right. Of course.
And this is my main the main reason why we're putting politics and philosophy together here
Right.
is
Yeah.
because politics becomes necessarily philosophical, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I would bring up, for example, is like one thing I feel like we're always gonna somewhat disagree on because of our values is healthcare, universal healthcare.
Yeah,
So that's gonna be a fun topic.
we'll get to that. We definitely want to cover that at some point. We're going to go from very philosophical concepts, like probably from argumentation and religion, and at some point we're going to cover very political issues like gun control, the death penalty, and privatization of healthcare,
Abortion, yeah, all that.
abortion. Yeah, try to cover everything in between. Uh, Obviously, you can never cover everything, but just stuff that especially interests us and might be especially uh, important at the moment in the world.
Yeah,
Some crazy events happening somewhere, I don't know, that
yeah, exactly.
might make it relevant.
When you have like a very wide topic, we can do like multi-parters or just longer episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's why different. We're probably gonna have multi-parts and longer episodes at some point. So about that dependency on values, I mean, isn't that why? It's why political parties exist, right?
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
That's
They're all just supporting their own values. They all think they're in the moral right.
yeah, exactly. That's why I feel like a lot of political parties nowadays see it as like a us versus them thing, and I can't support the Dems because I'm in the Republicans family. Like they see each other as like teams rather than
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah, and it goes both ways.
Yeah, of course.
If,
I just
if you
brought
if you
that
look,
as an example.
yeah, it's if you look at libertarians, their main their political opinions stems from valuing personal liberty. They don't want the government influencing things. It should be up to me, myself, and I how I live my life. If you look at conservatives, they value traditions and such a lot of the time, not always. If you look at socialists, and I'm distinguishing between social democracy and socialism here, because there seems to be quite a bit of misinformation about, or not misinformation, but people not understanding the difference between the two.
Right.
Socialists tend to believe that they mainly believe in equality, right?
Yeah.
Leveling the playing field to everyone. That can get really extreme in a stateless,
Nikki,
moneyless,
Nikki, are you being a
communist
communist
country.
right now? Nikki, are you
Oh,
being
I'm just talking
are you,
about
oh my god, I
about.
can't believe you're being a communist right now. Get off
Right,
my
okay.
stream.
So clearly, all your political opinions stem from from your philosophical values. So
Right.
politics becomes necessarily philosophical, and I want to hammer that home.
Absolutely. I feel like that's an angle that just doesn't get spoken of enough. Because I feel like everyone tries to argue politics just purely politically, which is why you
Hmm.
get like really heavy right wingers versus really heavy left wingers, and why you get stuff like Ben Shapiro destroys liberal feminists
Yeah,
with
yeah,
facts and not
yeah,
because
yeah. I mean,
it's
this is
when you have the politics and you don't realize that the philosophy is a big part of it. What you get out of that is just a bunch of emotion.
exactly, and that's something I talk about really often. Is how people start to identify with their beliefs,
Yeah.
and when their beliefs are challenged, they take it personally.
Yeah, exactly. People
And
get angry when they're like, "Why can't you understand that you're wrong?"
yeah, it's one reason why theoretically brainwashing is so effective is you hammer something into a child's head from an early age,
Yeah,
and
indoctrination.
indoctrination, and they uh they start to identify with that so strongly because it's their entire life from birth. They've never known any difference. And then they become completely closed off to other opinions. Of course, not everybody, but very often. And you see that all over the world with
Yeah,
cults and stuff, and it's terrible. Uh,
of course.
so we're running out of time here a little bit, but let's quickly talk about some more downsides of podcasting because I alluded to it earlier.
Right.
So even though it can be a positive that everything you put up on the internet is permanently there,
That's also the
you
downside.
that's also the downside. You're accountable for everything you say. You're publishing views and opinions of yourself, and that means that you draw attention in good ways from the people who agree with you, but also in bad ways from those that don't. As with all content creation, as you grow bigger, you might and probably will find yourself receiving hate.
Absolutely.
And who knows? I don't know. That might close doors in the future as well. Is when you've put up this profile of yourself online that has certain beliefs and values and opinion, uh, you might close doors into directions with people who don't agree with you. If you put up an completely uh, Republican view of yourself online, then are you going to be able to run as a Democrat? I don't know.
Only if lie a lot.
I mean, people change, and a lot of the time, others understand that, and a lot of the time they don't. Because when you're like, look, no, I, I don't think that way anymore.
Yeah,
I changed my mind.
I was just then I was gonna go for like a political jab, but I realized like probably not the best time.
Yeah. So that's one big deal is that if you're not ready for that, if you haven't thought everything through carefully and know what you're gonna do and how you're gonna how you're gonna format things
How you're gonna
and
express it.
keep how you're gonna express it exactly, you you are gonna be held accountable. You don't want to. There are things that you can say that are gonna be bad publicity. If you do it well, you're gonna build credibility and authority. But if you do it badly, nobody's gonna wanna watch, and it's gonna be there forever, and
Right.
that's gonna matter.
That is slightly problematic. Yep.
So, is that a good place to end it with this horribly negative point of view?
That is a bit of a depressing ending, isn't it?
It
Oh,
is.
by the way, everything you're doing, it sucks, and you're gonna lose your entire livelihood because of it.
But not necessarily.
But not necessarily. Boom. Origins of the name Paradigm Shift. Good
Okay, we'll
question.
finish up with a question from Spike then. So where did the name Paradigm Shift come from? I came up with it, so I guess I'll answer that question.
Yep.
So, I'm I don't I don't know if I should make the assumption that everyone here knows what paradigm means, but I'll explain it anyway in case for some reason there's some listener on YouTube or watching the VOD who doesn't. So paradigm is this systematic, I guess you would say, belief. So where a large group of people have a certain view, and a paradigm shift would be where you change the view of those people. Their paradigm changes. So that's somewhat what we're trying to do here. And well, first off, it sounds really cool, and I've
Hmm.
read about it in places.
It
It
does
just
sound pretty
sounds
cool.
good, but it is relevant to what we're trying to do here because as I talked about earlier, the scene with political commentary is completely saturated with people who that have strongly held beliefs, be it left or right or something else
Yeah,
entirely.
and we can essentially call those biases.
Exactly. And when you listen to those, what are you gaining? I mean, maybe you're gaining something if you're listening to ones that disagree with you, but that's fairly rare because people like to seek what they what people like to seek what they agree with. And then they're getting very biased information from there and they're just strengthening their older beliefs. So our goal here, because we're young, because we don't have strongly held beliefs, I believe that we can examine things with as little bias as possible and objectively reason our way to opinions. And that way, the viewership will hopefully appreciate that we're not trying to, that they'll see that we're not trying to spout some kind of propaganda at them, right? Because when you're trying to, when you're trying to expose yourself to adverse opinions, and all you're getting is that person with strongly held beliefs, it's easy to turn them aside because you're getting something completely different.
Right.
But when we try to empathize with both sides, I think we have a much higher chance of shifting someone's paradigm.
Yeah, exactly. Bringing ideas together, having people realize that, I mean, for one, we're all in this together, and we shouldn't really have like sides on like how we view. I mean, yeah, we should obviously because discourse is always good for society because it brings out
Yeah,
improvement.
exactly.
But
I'm sure we'll talk about free speech at some point.
exactly, but we want to bring that discourse into like a healthy medium rather
Hmm.
than the right yelling at the left and the left yelling at the right.
Exactly. And that's going to be our goal here, and that's why I wanted to finish off with those downsides. So you keep those in mind, and remember to be wary because obviously everybody knows that that things aren't black and white, but they still seem to make that mistake in everyday life. And Spiked Zen says, "But my trusted sources say that the Earth is flat."
Yeah, I
And
can't
on that
refute that.
note, and on that note, would you like to end the episode?
Yep, I have no
This has
argument
been
against that. This has
With
been.
no arguments. We accept that the Earth is flat.
Yep,
This
of
has
course.
been Paradigm Shift with your hosts Niki Kiiskinen and Eric Joseph. good times were had by all.